From downtown Detroit, Local 4 News at 11 starts now.
New details tonight in the disturbing allegations against an assistant principal in the Detroit Public Schools Community District. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Kimberly Gill.
And I'm Ty Steele. Now, this is a follow-up on a story we brought you last night. Jerome Younger is now behind bars. He's accused of sexually assaulting a student at his home. And we've now learned that victim was just 14 years old. Our
Noel Friel has more from the Macomb County prosecutor on how these allegations came to light.
Younger has been placed on leave as the Detroit Public Schools Community District conducts an internal investigation into that assault. He's now facing criminal sexual conduct charges and is facing up to life in prison if convicted.
A lot of people may not have the emotional strength to do what this young individual did.
Macomb County prosecutor Peter Lucido praising the bravery of a 14-year-old student who came forward after allegedly being assaulted by 54-year-old Jerome Younger. Younger is accused of sexually assaulting the student at his home on Wednesday. Lucido says the victim reported the assault to police immediately, which led to Younger's arrest.
I don't want to sit idle on those type of cases. Individuals that take advantage of a situation, and situation is juveniles, youth. We have to be their champions, their guiding lights.
Younger is now facing charges of first and second degree criminal sexual conduct. He's worked in education for more than 20 years and also mentored teens as part of the Detroit Police Department's Junior Police Cadet Program. The prosecutor's office believes it's possible more victims could come forward.
Time will tell. Students or individuals that are out there may find themselves at a point that they say, something, but until they say something, this is the only victim that we have at this time.
Lucido said this case highlights the importance of parents having difficult conversations with their kids about speaking out about sexual violence.
I hope that the families can maybe have a talk. I hope that there's enough trust between family members that if something did happen, to go ahead and get at the root of it, which is this. See that justice is done and served.
Detroit police gave us a statement that says in part, quote, the department can confirm that Mr. Younger served as a counselor within the Junior Police Cadet Program by way of the Detroit Employment Solutions Corporation, adding the department has extinguished all connections with him. You can see the school district's full response in this story at clickondetroit.com. Noel Friel, Local 4.
Right, Noel, thank you. A Kroger worker who stabbed a man to death inside the Southgate store on Tuesday will not be facing murder charges. Wayne County prosecutor Kim Worthy says the worker acted in self-defense. According to Worthy, the victim walked into the store and started punching the worker multiple times. That's when the worker pulled out a knife and stabbed the victim, who died from his injuries. While the worker won't face murder charges, he will still be charged for carrying a concealed weapon.
David Taylor, the pastor charged in a forced labor scheme spanning multiple states, is now back in Michigan. Taylor is charged along with Michelle Brannon, the executive director of the Kingdom of God Global Church. Prosecutors say the pair ran a forced labor operation where members were required to raise donations in the church's call centers without pay. And if they didn't meet their goals, they faced punishments such as sleep deprivation and physical abuse. Well, now a judge will have to decide if Taylor will be given bond or if he should be kept in custody. His next hearing is set for October 17th. An Oakland County doctor accused of sexually abusing and secretly recording patients has pleaded no contest to the charges. Umair Ajaz faces serious allegations, including sexual abuse and hiding cameras in patients' changing rooms. Pleading no contest means he's accepting the court's punishment without admitting guilt. This is important because it can't be used against him in civil lawsuits, which many victims have already filed. Ajaz pleaded no contest to 31 counts of sexual misconduct, with victims ranging from adults to a child as young as 2 years old.
A promising sight in the Middle East for the millions that have been living in war-ravaged Gaza. Israeli forces have completed the first phase of their withdrawal from parts of Gaza. Video here shows soldiers packing up and leaving in armored convoys. Despite the withdrawal, Palestinians are still being warned to avoid certain areas.
And tonight we've learned President Trump will travel to Israel on Sunday. The president plans to address the Israeli government in Jerusalem on Monday. And after that, he will travel to Egypt to take part in the signing ceremony of the Gaza peace agreement. He also plans to meet with other world leaders, but those details are in the final stages. The impact of the government shutdown is really starting to show tonight. More than 4,000 federal workers have received layoff notices as the shutdown hits day 10. More than half of those job losses are coming from the Department of Health and Human Services and the Treasury Department. That's according to the DOJ. President Trump told reporters that these layoffs would be, quote, Democrat-oriented. And just to clarify, these layoffs are different from the usual furloughs that happen when government funding runs out.
And those layoffs come as a federal judge hit the pause button on President Trump's plan to send more National Guard troops into even more American cities. The judge granting a temporary restraining order barring troops from being deployed to Chicago. The White House blasting the ruling, saying, quote, President Trump has exercised his lawful authority. However, the administration is now appealing that ruling. Now, for more insight on how these deployments are handled and the historical context behind them is former FEMA presidential appointee Mark Nouveau joining us once again. During his service, he helped deploy National Guard troops for both Republican and Democratic presidents. Mark, thanks as always for joining us. Given your experience with FEMA and National Guard troop deployments, how do you assess the legality and the constitutionality of states sending National Guard troops across state lines into D.C. and other cities to help with crime prevention when the jurisdictions did not request them?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. Good evening to you, Ty. That's what the courts are having to wrestle with. And each court is kind of given a different interpretation. That's why it's so confusing. Let me give you some background. When we talk about military soldiers, when we talk about Army, Navy, Air Force, etc., Marines, they're charged with, typically handling the defense of our country and foreign lands. When we talk about National Guard member, they're civilian soldiers. They may be doctors, lawyers, dentists in your community that serve part-time. What typically happens, the president will declare a disaster. They will deploy out and they will provide great assistance for people in neighborhoods. They'll give them water, cots, they'll provide security in disaster zones, etc. So in that role, there isn't a question because typically the governor has requested that assistance. In these instances, the governor is not requesting that assistance and the president is trying to push those troops forward without that request.
And Mark, some governors are actually now retracting their support for withdrawing troops. What do you believe are the operational, political, or legal risks that are driving that reversal?
Yeah, that's a difficult one because in a lot of cases, what we're talking about are cities that are larger with high crime rates. That's what what we're targeting in particular. Now, when we talk about ICE and support of ICE and immigration, that's a different one that they have to wrestle with. But a lot of those communities that we're talking about have low staffing in their police, number of officers in their police department, because of a number of factors. So they're faced with rising crime, although there has been some statistics that show crime rate is going down. However, that is not across the nation. So you've got challenge with the number of personnel to be able to provide security in neighborhoods along with this offer, but also you're trying to figure out how does that work constitutionally?
Yeah, that's the debate going on. Does relying on National Guard deployments for domestic law enforcement risk undermining civilian institutions, as some of these governors and mayors have said? Because we have seen crime rates come way down in places like D.C. after the deployments.
We have, and that's the counter, right? If you live in one of these neighborhoods where your crime rate is skyrocketing and somebody's going to provide you with assistance, you want to grab onto that. But the challenge also becomes, and here's where it kind of gets sticky. It's called posse comitatus, which is a law that basically says a typical soldier, Marines, Air Force, etc., they cannot carry live weapons on domestic soil. So we're asking duty members, National Guard members do have that capability, and we've utilized that in disaster zones to provide security after a major impact, hurricane, etc. So they're familiar with the role. It's how they're being designated and who's requesting that service.
Yes, so many legalities around this, so many court battles that are going to be had, and we have the president saying that he's going to be sending more troops out and about. So we'll have to see how this all unfolds. Mark Nouveau, former presidential appointee, we appreciate your take as always.
You're welcome. Thank you, Ty.
Of course.
In more news tonight, authorities say 19 people are dead or missing after a massive blast at an explosives company in Tennessee. It happened Friday morning at Accurate Energetic Systems, LLC, which manufactures military explosives. Video of the aftermath shows the building reduced to ash and rubble. Homes upward of 20 miles away felt a shockwave of the blast. The company has about 80 employees, but it's unclear how many were at work at the time of the explosion.